Hello and welcome to the show. My guest today is Amanda Close. She's the Education Outreach Manager for Waste Loop, a nonprofit organization in Leavenworth. Today we're talking all things recycling, and not just the typical recycling that so many of us know about and perhaps do in our own home, but the broader picture of what it looks like to recycle and reduce waste. We talk about composting. It's a very interesting topic for those of us who are interested in doing it. I learned so much today, and I'm ready to get started this spring because I started gardening a few years ago. So if you have any interest in composting and have no idea where to start, we're going to cover a bit of that today. We also talk about how you can reduce waste just in terms of your clothing, perhaps, getting them repaired or donating them before replacing them with new. Same with small appliances, getting them repaired before tossing them for brand new. We talk about an event coming up in Leavenworth called Leavenworth Repair Cafe, where you can actually bring your items that need repair to this event, and there will be people who specialize in those repairs who will do it for you. We're talking all things recycling, just as I said. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for being here today.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah, to share some of the activities that happen through Waste Loop and get familiar with your program and the different community-wide events you do. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about it. Can you tell us, please, your role and the mission of Waste Loop?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my name is Amanda Close, and I'm an Education Outreach Manager at Waste Loop. We're a small nonprofit that's based in Leavenworth, but we serve the Wenatchee Valley, and our mission is to transform our local waste streams into resources. And we largely do that through education and outreach.
So when people think about waste, I guess there's a lot of different ways to think about that and think about recycle. And one of the things we'll talk about a little later in the show is the Repair Cafe, the event that's coming up toward the end of this month. But first of all, let's talk about the waste that it seems overwhelming to some people, to a lot of people, to a lot of us, of like, how can we make a difference in waste? And one thing is recycling. And many people do it, and still some people do not. Or maybe they recycle certain things, but for example, glass is no longer picked up with our recycling. So we have to make the effort to store the glass and empty bottles and take them somewhere to recycle them. So what are some of the basic things that we could start in recycling if we don't already, just to start to make that impact from your point of view and what you try to teach people in the community, just beginning with that simple step of recycling?
Yeah, it's a great question. And recycling glass actually was one of the first initiatives that Waste Loop took when we were founded in 2019. And I would say, like, if you're not recycling right now, you're not alone. It can be complicated because what is and isn't accepted does change. And that's based on kind of our hauler waste management and the economics behind all of it. And so I would just say to try and just educate yourself on what is and is not recycled, because it is actually kind of worse to recycle something that is not currently accepted because you think, you want to do the right thing, but we call that wish cycling, and that's actually contamination. And so trying to just really break it down: paper, cardboard, tin and aluminum cans, and then plastic bottles. Those are currently kind of like the major categories. And if you stick with that, you should be pretty good to go, keeping in mind to make sure that they're clean. So no food or liquids in those bottles or cans.
So you have to rinse everything. That's the extra step. You don't just throw the tub in there like it is, right? And that's something that's an extra step for people, right? It's just an extra step to do, but it's worth it in the long run. So then when it is hard, because when I signed up for recycling years ago, it was different. And then, I don't really look at my bill very closely. I just know what it is. I have it automatically withdrawn. So all the messages that they send that are updating us with what to get, where do we go to get that information if we're someone who just does online bill pay and we aren't getting paper emails? Where do we go to get that information?
Yeah, so I would recommend checking the waste management website specifically for our area. They have a page for Leavenworth, they have a page for Wenatchee, and then I believe just unincorporated Chelan County as well. You can also go to the Waste Loop website because we also try and break it down for folks, especially those people using the Leavenworth Recycling Center, because mixed recycle is one of the things that we collect there.
One of the things you talked about at the beginning is the different ways of recycling and the different ways of taking care of waste as, a person who participates in Waste Loop. So recycling seems like the obvious one, which we've already discussed. What are some things that aren't as obvious to people watching who are thinking, I never even considered that as something that's removing waste from our planet?
Yeah, I love that question because I think it's true. Recycling is kind of viewed as kind of the easiest option and the first thing people think of. But you might recall kind of the three R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. And so that really challenges people to look at waste a little bit further upstream. So reducing the amount that you purchase, potentially, like in single use plastic, for example. Maybe using, a reusable water bottle instead of buying, a 24 packet Costco of those plastic bottles. Um, and then thinking about reuse in a little bit more creative ways. Repair is another R that I like to share with people. Um, you know, Repair is something I think we all kind of have a pile of clothes that maybe have like little holes or a puffy jacket that needs to be patched. And we're just like, I'll do that another time. And then the pile grows and grows and grows. But repair is something that we can do on our own. There's so many great YouTube videos out there for all types of repairs. And we'll talk about some community events later. But that's something that we can do to keep our items in use and out of the landfill and prevent having to go and buy new things. And then as well as kind of upcycling, repurposing, using items for, craft projects if you have children. Yeah, and just getting creative with things, sharing with friends, like clothing swaps are really fun. Yeah, things like that.
I had a Christmas party. I have a Christmas party every year. And one of the years, or maybe I have a spring party too, summerish, and patio party, I call it. And so this last year, what we did during the spring party is we had everyone bring, I think it was 3 items from their closet that they wanted to gift. And we do kind of the white elephant gift giving where you rotate and steal and all of the things that make it fun. But I was thinking about how I read this so many years ago that we wear 20% of our clothing 80% of the time. So donation also falls in there where we can donate some of those clothes. I know that YWCA is a really great place, and they make sure that career women are having clothes that they can use to go to work, that kind of thing. So what are some of the donation type things that fall in line with your mission at Waste Loop?
Yeah. So definitely recommends, donating any clothes that are still wearable to one of our many wonderful community organizations that accept those donations. For us at Waste Loop, we're opening a brick and mortar facility in Kashmir that is focusing on reused building materials. And so things like lumber, maybe hardware items, even appliances like a washing machine or a sink. Just thinking about like if you have done any sort of like home renovation projects or even DIY building projects, and then you get to the end and you have a bunch of materials left over that are totally usable, but you don't have space to maybe store them in your home. You don't think you'll use them for a future project. This new project of ours called Eastside Rebuild will be a space where you can bring all of those leftover materials that you don't think you'll need or want, and then we'll sort through them, price them, and then they'll be available at affordable prices for other community members. So it'll be also a great place to source used materials for your own projects.
Yeah. Well, how many times do you maybe change the look of your bathroom and then change out the towel hangers or whatever, and then they end up in a box in your garage? And I tape the screws to them. I keep them all together, but they're just sitting in the garage. So that gives me the idea that that's a place I could bring these items to, that kind of thing.
Totally. As part of that project, we'll also have a tool library. So this will be a location where you can check in and out tools that you may just need for a project, or, once a year you're cleaning your gutters or something, you need to borrow a tall ladder. And so we'll have, yearly memberships, kind of a sliding scale system for that. And yeah, I'm personally really excited about that because I live in a pretty small space and I don't have room to store a bunch of different tools. And so we're currently kind of accepting donated tools, and also trying to gather a list of what tools community members hope that we'll be able to offer.
That's perfect. That's a really good idea. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about a couple other ideas for recycling, and then we'll get to the conversation about Repair Cafe. We're back talking with Amanda Close of Waste Loop. So all the things recycling we're talking about, one of the things that I know is part of the work that you do in education is composting. And I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. I've seen it done. I have no idea where to begin. And to me, it's an overwhelming concept. But I started having a garden a few years ago, and I think it could be useful, obviously, but I don't know where to start. So the idea of composting for just someone beginning, where do we start?
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for the question. And there's a lot of different ways that you can compost. So I think it really depends on your space that you have, where you live, and then what your goals are. So you mentioned having a garden and presumably perhaps have an outdoor space that you would be able to build a compost system, maybe in a backyard or something. And
when you say system, I feel overwhelmed. What does that mean?
Yeah. So breaking down composting to the very basics is you're basically creating an environment where bacteria, worms, other insects are able to live and eat, essentially. They're breaking down all of your food scraps and yard debris. So basically, you need a space large enough that you are able to put in both what we call the carbon-rich materials, which are browns. So think dead leaves, pine needles, plant clippings, wood chips, anything that is kind of plant-based from your yard usually has a lot of carbon in it. Okay. And then we also want our nitrogen-rich inputs, which are generally thought of as like your food waste. So those are vegetable peelings, fruit cores, fruit peels from your kitchen. If you're composting at home, you want to avoid any dairy, meat, or processed foods because those can attract animals like rodents.
Well, that was
or just other
question too. So if we use it outside, it obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, it needs to be open air, so exposed to the air, right? So we need to build a fence around it or something, because we have some rabbits around my house and they're going to like those, those fruit pills and those kinds of things. So you just build something around it to keep them out, just as you build it to keep out of your garden. Or you can build compost not usually be, is compost not as disturbed as a garden would be?
Yeah, so you can build an enclosure around it if you want. But as long as you have both of those sources, the carbon brown sources and the nitrogen green sources, it should minimize odor. So think of it as a layer cake. If you put a bunch of, fruit peelings, if say you made applesauce or something, put that in your pile, and then you add on top of it some sort of brown material, whether that's a bag of raked leaves that you have on at your yard or some wood chip, sawdust. But you're always wanting to end with that material because it helps with the mixing of those two materials, and then it also prevents odor and reduces the chance that you'll have animals coming.
Well, that's good. I mean, that is new information to me, because I thought, well, it's already difficult to keep the rabbits out of my garden. And so then now I've composted, let's say, what's a good size to start with?
So for the most effective breakdown, I'm saying like the most rapid breakdown, you want to have about a cubic yard.
Okay.
And that will allow enough heat to be generated by the bacteria within the pile to rapidly break down material. If you have smaller amounts, then any outside air will kind of cool down your bacteria, because the bacteria actually generate heat as they eat up all of those nutrients. And that's what's going to break down your pile.
And then how long does it take from the time we started to think, okay, I'm going to compost to when you can actually use some of it? And I'm guessing you rotate what you use based on how long it's been there.
Yeah. So other components that you need for an efficient breakdown are aeration. So kind of turning over the pile, and then moisture. I'm thinking especially in the summer when it's just super hot. Obviously, your food scraps have moisture in them. So it's kind of monitoring it every few days, every week, kind of check in. And then it also depends on the weather. So if we're in the dead of winter and you have a pile of snow on top of your compost pile, there's probably not a lot of bacterial activity right now. So it's going to probably not break down over the winter. But then if we're in springtime, summer, and you have, again, like that large, about a cubic yard pile, a couple of months, maybe 3 to 4 months to break down. And so with that said, if you do have the space, having multiple piles, so if you just Google like a 3-bay system, it's often you can build it even with old pallets, and you'd have 3 sections. So you put all of, like, say you're doing like a spring cleaning in, March or April, you make a pile in there, and then you just want to let those materials, the bacteria, do their thing. And then so you start adding new materials in that second bay.
Okay.
And you just, so you always have different piles in different stages.
Right. It's kind of like planting lettuce. You have to keep planting it. It grows so fast, and then you just keep planting it as you're pulling it. Planting. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So I know that these are things that we can also get from YouTube in great detail, but this is just kind of to get the inspiration for people like me who think that's a big, overwhelming thing to do, but it's something I think that's worth doing and worth learning. So we have resources right here in our community through Waste Loop to learn. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Repair Cafe that's happening toward the end of this month, and also just the many events that you have throughout our community to support the mission of Waste Loop. We'll be back in just a moment. We're wrapping up with you, Amanda, from Waste Loop. Thanks for being here so far. So we've learned more about recycling and what we can do with donating our items, and how we can use the things that we've repaired in our own house to help other people repair theirs. And composting, which is a particular interest to me and perhaps people watching. Repair Cafe that's happening in Leavenworth toward the end of the month. That's just one of the outreach events that Waste Loop conducts. So tell us about that event, how people can plug into it, and its importance.
Sure. Yeah. So February 29th, we'll be hosting our first Repair Cafe of the year. And the Repair Cafe is a free community event, open to everyone. If you have an item that is malfunctioning, is broken, you don't quite know how to make it work, or don't have the time maybe, feel free to join us, bring that item, and we'll have a team of fixers. These will be community members that have specialized skills, whether it's mending and sewing, electronic appliance repair, knife sharpening. We have a ton of talented fixers within the community that we've recruited to help with our events. And you'll just, show up at the event anytime between 6 and 8. It's a first come, first serve sort of thing, but we'll match you to a fixer that has experience based on the specific item that you bring. And then they'll be able to kind of share with you some tips and tricks that what they're trying to do to fix that. And then hopefully they'll be able to fix it. So other things to keep in mind, we will have childcare at the event. So feel free to bring your kiddos with you. And then if you have any sort of manuals or spare parts, that would be probably helpful for that volunteer fixer for your specific item. You can bring those along as well.
Is there, I don't know that I imagine anyone would bring a fridge that's maybe in their garage that isn't working, but is there a limit to the size of what people can bring?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yes, please only bring items that you can carry safely by yourself. It's an indoor event as well, so nothing gas powered, nothing that's leaking liquids or fumes or that's dangerous.
So bring your toaster.
Yes, toasters, bring them. Blenders, yep.
So, for people who aren't familiar with Waste Loop, let's talk more specifically about some of the other events you do, because the Leavenworth Repair Cafe is just one event. And what are some of the others that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so the repair cafes will be monthly. This is the first one, but then be on the lookout for additional events. And then we also just try and partner with other members of the community that have skills or interests related to waste reduction and sustainability that they want to showcase. And so anything from upcycled basket making or rug making to our biggest event of the year, the Earth Day Fair. This year, that'll be April 21st at Enchantment Park in Leavenworth. We'll have live music, food, a bunch of different vendors, booths, and activities going on. And so, yeah, that's kind of our biggest event coming up, but we try and do 1 to 2 events each month with a variety of different topics.
So, with the Earth Day that's in April, uh, what is there something that somebody who is watching who wants to volunteer or get involved? Is there a need for that for what you're doing? How can people
Yes.
plug into that?
Yeah, Earth Day Fair, we really rely on volunteers. It's also just a really fun way to spend your time. And you can get in touch with me, contact at wasteloop.org if you're interested in volunteering. But then we also have a page on our website, how to get involved, and we have a volunteer interest form that folks can fill out.
When people are thinking about Waste Loop and the different events that you have, so we've talked about Earth Day, we've talked about the Repair Cafe. Uh, what about the volunteers that help with repairing the items? How do they get involved in making sure? Because, I mean, some people are pretty handy even if they don't have a license in it, right? But they might want to be involved and be helpful.
Yeah, we would love anyone out there who has skills or even just an interest in learning how to repair and helping out at these events. You can either directly reach out to me or on our website, which is wasteloop.org. There's a page focused on our repair cafes, and there's a link to sign up as a volunteer fixer.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with the events. It's your first ever. You kind of never know what to expect, but the more people know about it, the more they'll show up and the more they'll have the need. And I think too, I mean, I'm already imagining a couple things that I could bring in, but also if you get frustrated with something, you can think, oh, okay, I'll just hold on to this for like a month and then I'll look for the next repair event and I can get this fixed and not have to stress over it or try to fix it myself. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you should come join us.
Yes, I will do
All
that.
right.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here and sharing. And yeah, we look forward to. We'll make sure we add your website so people can find more events in the future. Thanks for being here.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Lisa.